unmuted.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I have the distinction of living closest, and I was almost late because I spent 20 minutes driving around the parking garage the whole time thinking, I could have just walked down Montgomery. So I'm glad you're here. Those of you who already have a hotel room, that you didn't have to endure the parking garage. First of all, of course, thank you to PSU for letting us use their boardroom. It is wonderful to be on this campus. Again, it was supposed to be very convenient for me, although that's not why it was chosen. And we will hear from PSU, as you know, with their mission and vision approval tomorrow near the end of the meeting. We also have a tour this afternoon of some of their new buildings and things they're doing. So stay tuned for that. I also want to welcome new member, Mary Middleton from Rogue. I almost said Umpqua. Sorry, that's because all of the approvals of Umpqua. We're very glad to have you here. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us about your interest in HECC?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mary Middleton, and I am very excited to be here as part of the commission. I've been teaching in community college level for more than 20 years. I teach mathematics at Rogue Community College, and I've been involved in leadership at the faculty level, and I'm very interested in helping this board work through the challenges that we have in education, higher education. Thank you.
Well, we're very glad to have you here. We haven't had a mathematician for a while, have we? Mathematicians always keep us straight.
Frank.
Yeah, since Frank went off. So I'm very glad to have you and your expertise and enthusiasm. So thank you. Also, you saw in the notes that Helen Edwards has been reappointed. How many of you were on the commission when Helen went off 2 years ago? I think it's about half and half. So several of you don't know Helen. Okay, she's not joining us until after January 1st. She was a very strong member. Again, lots of good questions. She and her husband have a company that they started, Artificiality, which is specializes, they're consultants and experts all over the world on how technology and now especially AI interact with our lives. So she brings a big expertise and fine mind and experience to us. So we're very glad to have her back. Also, Rakaya, who we said goodbye to at the last meeting, fortunately has agreed to stay on until Helen can come on. So we have Rakaya through the end of the year, and we'll thank her again. She'll be here, I think, in person tomorrow. And we have the reappointment of Natalie Arnault and of Emily. So thank heavens, both of you. We're very, very glad. Thank you for agreeing to that reappointment and getting that done, both for 2-year terms, right? Well, it's wonderful to have you. And also, he slipped away without me realizing that his time was up, but Commissioner Rojas Galvan has finished his service on the board. That was another one of the one-time 2-year appointments. So lots of new going on. The only other thing before we get started, the highlight of this meeting, of course, is the strategic plan, as you know, which we will be dealing with tomorrow. And I'll have more to say about it tomorrow, but it is, we've been working on it for a year, and I think it's a very good plan. I hope you do, and we'll have lots of time for discussion tomorrow and for presentation on that. I would like today, and I'll do it again tomorrow, to thank Ben and Greg Heyman. Greg is traveling on business, and he's on screen with us today. Emily Simnett and Arnell Fiordo, and our good partners at Coraggio, and we'll thank them in more detail tomorrow, but the work you're going to see tomorrow would not have gotten done without the very best efforts and really deep thought and research of these people. So thank you. Let's see. Also on as Ben pointed out, on the agenda, there's several important rule changes that we have, And we have two reports, I think both of them fall today, that we requested as a commission. One is on the trends in program approvals for both community colleges and universities, and the other is on the different models and enrollment for the various nursing programs. So both of those informational items, for those of you who weren't here when we asked for them, are in response to our request. And I think that's all. So let's see, Guthrie, can you call the roll now, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. Roll. Sandy Rowe.
Present.
Greg Heyman.
He's
Here.
there.
Rukaya Adams. Natalie Arnold.
Present.
Rachel Bisco.
Here.
Richard Devlin.
Present.
Ardo.
Present.
Jim Cooker.
Present.
Teresa Martinez.
Present.
Jen Proctor Andrews. Mary Middleton.
Present.
Emily Simnett.
Present.
Moshe Thomas Apelli. Present. Jennifer Smith.
Present.
Gail Yamasaki.
Present.
That is roll, Madam Chair, and we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. For those of you online, we can actually see you. You're bigger than postage stamp size. So that's great. So still, when you want in for something, if I don't see you, please holler, because we don't have the same setup in here. Okay, first item, of course, is approval of the minutes. Are there any questions, additions, changes? Can we have a motion for approval, please?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Minutes are passed. Okay, I think you are up now, Mr.
Yes,
Cannon.
thank you. Let me turn the mic on. Welcome, commissioners. It's so great to have a mostly in-person meeting, and especially wonderful to be at Portland State University, not only because I live in Portland, but because it's just a lovely room and a opportunity to spend some time on this campus, including at the tour this afternoon, and to hear from the president and board member tomorrow. As a few of you may know or recall, before the pandemic, the commission made an effort to meet several times a year, really 3 to 4 times a year, outside of the Salem kind of headquarters. And so that was typically at a community college or a university. And we'd love to get back in that practice. So stay tuned, because as we look ahead to 2025 and 2026, we'll likely be working with our colleges, universities, as well as you, to identify some sites and dates for holding those offsite meetings. So I think it's just a really important way for commissioners to connect more closely with some of the institutions that we support. Chair Rowe mentioned our new and reappointing commissioners. I'll join her in welcoming Mary and expressing pleasure, appreciation that Natalie and Emily have been reappointed, that Helen will be coming back to the commission. This is we've had a fair amount of turnover, but I feel like we have a really strong core here, and it's developing, and appreciate all of the service that you all give and commit to through your work as commissioners. At our last meeting, as you'll recall, in August, you voted to submit the agency's agency request budget, which is a first step in this very long process, nearly year-long process of developing the legislatively approved and governor-signed budget for the upcoming biennium. So we submitted that budget and the accompanying letter to the governor that expressed some of our hopes and concerns with respect to the upcoming biennium's budget. And then it goes into what could seem like a black box, because the governor works closely with the chief financial office, her staff, to develop a governor's recommended budget that's announced publicly December 1st. And really, between the submission of that agency request budget and the governor's budget, there is no public process or information. It's really her work to put the pieces together. I continue to work with CFO and governor's office staff to help answer questions, and provide information and feedback as she's considering her options for the governor's request budget. I just want to, assure the commission that in that work that we do as staff with her staff, that we are upholding and following the principles and priorities that you've established within your agency request budget and the accompanying letter. That being said, it is clear that the upcoming biennium will present a very difficult budget environment. And there are a number of causes for that, including the much greater than ever before wildfire costs that the state has experienced this summer and that are continuing. Hopefully not for very much longer, but it has been the worst wildfire season on record, which is, I think, may come as something as a surprise to folks who live on the western side of the state because we've had less smoke intrusion than in some prior years, but statewide this has been the worst of our fire seasons, unfortunately. It's also the case, and that imposes hundreds of millions of dollars of cost on the state, not all of which was fully anticipated. Caseloads in our Department of Human Services and healthcare system are increasing, and there are costs associated with that. And then, as we've discussed in the development of the ARB, there was a lot of one-time funding that the state committed during the last several biennia, some of which will need to be sustained. And this will be a policy choice that the governor and the legislature make. Some of that one-time funding was enjoyed by the HECC and included much of the support for Future Ready Oregon and some other programs that benefited from that funding. But that places a lot of strain on the state's budget going forward when those revenues that supported that one-time funding, mostly federal revenues, are no longer available to the state. I expect hear more about that in a few minutes from Sarah Foster. I'm just so excited, is here on behalf of Governor Kotek and is the governor's new policy advisor for areas including the HECC. And so really pleased that we're able to work with her on this project of supporting education and training in the upcoming biennium. Final thing I'll say before I think we will hear from Sarah, final couple of things. Like you, Madam Chair, I'm excited for the strategic planning presentation and conversation tomorrow. It does represent a lot of work by a lot of folks, including Commissioners Simnett and Fajardo and Heyman, as well as HECC staff and Coraggio and the many, many, many partners. We'll hear more about this who contributed to providing input and feedback on the plan. And as I've thought about, and we can talk more about this, of course, tomorrow, but I've thought about like what are we trying to do? What's different? What is what is this plan responsive to? I think one way of encapsulating it that I'll just submit for your consideration is we're trying to answer the question, I think the very important question of how the HECC will and is improving the value of higher education and training in Oregon. We're meeting that question, which we know from public opinion data that the public and potential students, workers, et cetera, are themselves asking these questions about value. We're attempting to meet that directly through these strategies that include both an emphasis on lowering the cost, right? That's one way to improve the value of education, is to make it more affordable for those who participate in it. And another way is to increase its impact on individuals and communities, help it pay off. And that's can be measured in terms of income, but also other impacts on people's lives and communities. So I think that's my way of understanding really how this plan meets the moment. So we'll hear more from you, Chair Rowe, and from other commissioners throughout the discussion tomorrow, but wanted to share those thoughts at the outset today. Finally, your packets include, as always, or typically, an update on the HECC's spending to date against our current biennium budget. That's in your materials. If you have questions, I think we provided that through the end of August. So we'll have our September report soon, but it was August that's in your packet. And if you have any questions about spending against our current biennium's budget, please don't hesitate to ask. We may need to follow up with more detail, but happy to do so. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Ben?
That should be it.
Cities.
Yes, I think twice today.
Oh,
You'll hear
twice
from-
today?
Twice
Good.
today.
I'll take you twice.
Yeah, so just brief introductions. I do want to say that I had the opportunity to be in the Rogue Valley a couple weeks ago. So just love to see y'all out in community. And it was awesome to tour the health sciences, the new campus up in White City. So that it's just awesome to see the investments in real time and to talk to students and tour the facility. It's life-giving when you're working on hard things every day. So just so glad to see you all here at PSU. Thank you for the opportunity to just introduce myself. I'm Sarah Foster. I'm Governor Kotek's workforce, labor, and higher education advisor. So just want to share that I'm not just higher ed, I'm a lot of things, but really eager to work with all of you as we think about just higher education and the importance of higher ed and training students for both life and the workforce. Know that's really critically important. I'd say that, I don't know, Ben, I feel like you gave a lot of my talking points around, this is okay, I'll just reiterate, around the Governor Kotek really balancing policy development with a challenging budget environment, and just want to reiterate that, that we're in a tough spot. Again, historical, I think, when you think of 2020's wildfire, think of double that and even more. It's just a really challenging environment, and we're going to have to and should support our communities in their recovery. Also, just the caseloads increasing, though revenue is continuing to grow. It's just that tricky balance that we need to strike with our budget. But just wanted to thank you for your letter, and thank you for the work that you put into that to really look clearly at your priorities. And also thank you for leaning into a lot of the areas of our workforce and talent development that we're trying to grow. I think behavioral health, semiconductors, a lot of the investments that the HECC has been making, Future Ready Oregon, all of that just remains critically important. So just wanted to thank you all for your continued support in that area. I don't know if you want to know a little bit about me. I was at the HECC for about 1.5 years working in the healthcare space. So really supporting the healthcare industry consortia that's part of Future Ready, but also supported some of the technology work and really thinking about how to bridge industry needs with workforce and education strategies and higher education strategies. So prior to that, and this is the lens in which I bring to a lot of my work, I worked at the Business Council, both thinking about economic mobility, but also health policy, but rooted deeply in people and community. And so love that you're thinking strategically about what students are asking of our higher ed system, how to better serve students and communities. So just really applaud the values, and some of the plan I've seen already is just really resonant about really responding to students and community needs. So just appreciate that. That's a little bit about me, but just really glad to be here, both in this capacity, but also speak to some of the work I was working on with the nursing workforce later today. Questions?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Is this, in terms of combining it with workforce and other things, is this a new construction of the position in the governor's office? And I'm interested too in how you think she will rely on you, sort of
Yeah.
what do you provide for her?
Yeah, it's a great, so I'd say that, I don't know about all of the different administrations, but prior to this, there was a higher ed, and then workforce and economic development. And so really thinking about how to connect higher ed and workforce, and I have labor in my title too. So really thinking about that intersection. So to answer your question, is I think it's strategically thinking about, and I think this is resonant and shows up in your strategic plan about how to better connect workforce and higher ed with industry needs. And I'll just share that I do work really closely across the policy advisor team, in particular with economic development, so that we don't lose line of sight to the economic development lens when we think about higher ed and workforce. But I'd say higher ed, workforce, and labor together, I think, is the broad portfolio. The HECC, I also work closely with the employment department. I know a lot of the workforce dollars are housed at the employment department too. So that'll be a big area of my portfolio. And also the Department of Business and Consumer Services, really working with them, the largest regulatory agency of the state, and all the intersections that that shows up in particular around employment.
Wonderful. Well, in terms of employment and workforce development, we've, as a state, we seem to have had difficulty sort of linking that directly to higher education.
Mhm.
So with you having both in your portfolio and it being a high priority for us in the strategic plan, we really look forward to seeing how we can make progress as a state on that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you. And you know the HECC, so what could
I
be
do
better?
know the HECC.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you.
If I may, just as
Please.
Sarah finishes, it was very sad to lose Sarah from the HECC. I have to say, this was she leaves enormous shoes to fill, and couldn't have been happier about where she landed, because we get to continue to work with her, and she's in a position to really help us, and she knows the HECC and us well. So just really excited that this is where Sarah's at. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have public testimony. Guthrie, do I have a list? Or is it?
The only sign up I have so far is Leo or your student.
Oh, yes. Welcome, Nick.
Hello, Commission. My name is Nick Keogh. I am the Legislative Director for the Oregon Student Association. And today I'm here to read a statement on behalf of OSA about an organizational update. Hello, Commissioners. It is with a heavy heart that we announce the closure of the Oregon Student Association after almost 50 years of student-led advocacy across the state. Since 1975, OSA has empowered future leaders and unified students across Oregon to build collective power to advocate for policies that create a more equitable and accessible higher education system. OSA has worked tirelessly for decades to ensure that the voices and rights of students were heard and respected at every level of decision-making. The decision to close our doors was not made lightly. For several years, OSA has faced challenges related to our organizational structure and funding mechanisms, which have made it increasingly difficult to maintain sustainable operations. These challenges, coupled with the tragic loss of a staff member and the critical injury of our executive director in a car accident in July of 2024, has made it implausible for OSA to continue operating. We recognize that the decision to close OSA will be impactful to the students, alumni, and community members who have been a part of our decades-long journey. The connections made within OSA and the Oregon Students of Color Coalition and the Oregon Student Equal Rights Alliance have led to lifelong friendships, professional partnerships, and networks of leaders who continue to support and inspire one another long after leaving the organization. These relationships are a testament to the community that OSA built, a community rooted in shared purpose, respect, and friendship. We are really proud of what we have accomplished. Through persistent legislative advocacy and grassroots organizing, we have helped secure billions in state funding for public universities and community colleges, expanded access to financial aid and tuition equity, and championed policies that have promoted equity in education and addressed the most pressing issues that students face. Through strong partnerships with student governments across Oregon, we have provided essential training, mentorship, and resources to help student leaders develop the skills and knowledge needed to become powerful advocates for their peers. The decision to close OSA comes during a difficult time for higher education. Rising tuition costs and escalating student debt are making it more difficult than ever before for students to access and complete their college education. The need for collective student advocacy remains as important as ever. While this chapter of student advocacy in Oregon is coming to a close, we remain confident in students' abilities to build towards a better future. We firmly believe that the students of Oregon will continue to rise to the occasion, ready to adapt and innovate as they continue to fight for a world where higher education is a right for all, not a privilege for the few. We thank the countless staff, board members, coalition partners, and student leaders who have given their time, energy, and passion to OSA over the years. Together, we have made a difference, and it has really been an honor to serve Oregon students. We leave behind not just a legacy, but a call to action. To every student, organizer, and advocate, your voice matters, and your work is needed. We've continually been inspired by the voices that have risen up through OSA, and we are confident that those voices will go on to lead the future of our state and student advocacy in Oregon. The fight for a better future for all students is far from over. Thank you from the Oregon Student Association.
Excuse me. Nick, on behalf of the HECC, we are so sorry to receive this news. You have been the organization through the years that really have both taught advocacy to the people involved in it, and been a wonderful and really beneficial central voice to us. We have, as you know, other student advocates, both individual and by group, coming up. But you have historically been thoughtful, done the research, and really provided a very clear voice for students' interest, which we have wanted to hear and needed to hear. And you specifically in coming to us previously and all the work you personally have done really has been appreciated. We thank you for the even-handed way and calmness with which you have presented and advocated on really important, heated subjects, but in a way that helped us see them more clearly and in a way that fully represented the students. So we hope really that this same kind of holistic student representation can come up another way or can be revived at some time. And again, thank you for your service to the students of Oregon and to the state of Oregon and to us. And we're just very sorry and hope that your colleague who was seriously injured is getting better.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rowe. Really appreciate it.
Are there questions for Nick? You did a good job of explaining the reasons, but no, please go ahead, Commissioner Biscoe.
I don't really have a question. It's more of just reaching out, and I've worked with you and many of the OSA members. It is definitely a lot of pain that I felt when I saw the notice about Jose and Joseph. You guys have made a huge difference, and I've worked with you closely as an individual who is also in Student Leadership Council. You guys are very important to the state, and hopefully the advocacy can continue.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. Commissioner.
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm surprised that not surprising, but it sucks because I've just been a huge fan of student advocacy. Because of OSA, I ended up here at the HECC because I was the president, student body president during the pandemic. I don't recommend it though. But for the most part, I just learned so much from y'all, and to see an organization that's done so much for me to go, it's kind of gut-wrenching. but hopefully this will not be the end. Maybe OSA Part 2 might come out. But for the most part, like I just wanted to say thank you so much on behalf of like everything that you've not only done for me, the organization's not only done for me, but for everyone else, because all my friends who are part of all the different coalitions and committees, they're now doing all sorts of political stuff. Granted, I'm gonna go to med school, but that's like besides the point. But I just learned so much from the organization, and at least in this space, I wanted to say thank you to you, to everyone on the team who made it work up until now. But yeah, let's stay in touch. Add me on LinkedIn. We'll
Sounds
create
good.
OSA Part 2, but no, I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. We
you.
really appreciate it.
Commissioner Coker?
I think I can say more than anyone in this room that I understand the challenges of making an organization like OSA work and making it into the absolute titan of advocacy that it is to this day. So many folks have come before me and after me that have made OSA just an absolutely incredible organization. And I can really concretely say that the organization has made a huge difference in folks' lives in the state of Oregon, and that I would not be where I am today without the Oregon Student Association. So it's really, as Motu said, it's gut-wrenching to hear this news, but I understand, especially with all of the difficulties that the organization's faced since COVID, and especially the difficulties that the organization has faced with the tragedy that's happened this past year. I know that student advocacy in this state is very sorely needed, and it is so saddening to me that OSA is not able to continue in its current form, but it's something that I understand, and I hope that you know that your work is appreciated and cherished and continues and will continue to make ripples throughout the state of Oregon for decades to come. And I hope that a new iteration of student advocacy can continue to carry on your legacy.
Thank you.
And aren't we fortunate to have so many commissioners who come from a background of student advocacy? So thank you for that also. Commissioner Devlin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to state for the record that during my 21 years in the legislature and my several years here on HECC, I have always found the input of OSA to be very beneficial to the process. I think there have been some remarks as to the other thing I'd like to bring up. I can't do a list right now off the top of my head, but quite a number of legislative staff began their work in advocacy in OSA, an incredible number actually. And if you were to look at the current lobby, I think you would find there also a number of people that began their careers in advocacy at OSA. I think you'll be sorely missed, and I'm hopeful that sometime in the future, we will again have a broader organization that will bring together student interests and present them to parties that need to hear from them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you feel our genuine appreciation and the loss we feel by not having your organization anymore. Thank you very much for coming and for delivering that heartfelt and substantive statement. And we hope you'll stay in touch
Thank
and
you.
stay interested in the HECC.
Thank you. Appreciate it all.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, we're now going to the consent agenda. As you know, these are a package. They have been approved by staff. If there are any you have questions on, we would need to pull it out from the consent agenda, which we certainly can do. I hope you notice the reason for so many coming at one time from Umpqua, I think 17 of the 18 come from Umpqua, is that I think, well, most of them, maybe almost all of them, are because of changes over time of more than 30% to the program, at which point they're required to come back through the approval process. So that's why we have so many at once. These are not all brand new programs. They're programs that have been revised. Okay. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Thank you. Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. That takes us all the way down to the next page.
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule, Madam Chair, with the limited public testimony today. And what I'd suggest is that we, unless Guthrie has another idea, I'd suggest we take Kyle's legislative report now while we're waiting for our invited guest. Let's do that.
Our invited testimony should be on.
Oh, we can stick with the order then if she's ready.
I don't have a microphone. Could you?
Yeah. Is Sheila on the line?
I am on the line. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh, there you are. Now we see you. Would you
Great.
please introduce her? Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank
We're
you
glad
so
to have
much.
you. Please introduce yourself and tell us about the work you are doing.
Excellent. And Guthrie, you're going to present the slides for me?
Yes, just bringing them up now.
Okay. In the meantime, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Sheila Clow, and I am the CEO for Mercy Flights, headquartered in Southern Oregon. And I've been the honor of presenting today Southern Oregon's EMS apprenticeship program, which is significantly funded by the Future Ready Workforce Grants. And I'll wait for Guthrie to bring up the slides. Fantastic. Thank you, Guthrie. And I'll just have you advance them. The next slide, much like the broader healthcare industry, the emergency medical services industry is also facing some major workforce challenges. In 2021, I was asked to chair the Oregon State Ambulance Association's Workforce Development Committee because of some significant staffing shortages that many of our fire departments and EMS agencies were having. Collectively with the Fire Chiefs Association, we did some research and found that EMTs and paramedics, which are part of the EMS workforce, are in significant shortages in this decade. And according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, that isn't going to change anytime soon. So what we were experiencing in our agencies is definitely happening across the entire country. The American Ambulance Association put out a statement in 2021 indicating these shortages were impacting communities across the country. Next slide. In addition to the shortages, we recognized that EMTs and paramedics are really a critical entry point to the broader healthcare system. EMTs and paramedics start their careers oftentimes in ambulance companies, EMS agencies, fire departments. They also work in emergency departments as technicians. These individuals go on and advance their degrees and end up in flight paramedicine, end up as flight nurses. They're also populating a number of our organizations who are now doing mobile integrated healthcare, where they're bringing healthcare into the patient's home as paramedics or nurses. And it's not uncommon for a paramedic to go on to become a nurse or a physician that are helping to advance the healthcare careers in that way. Next slide. Fortunately, as we were doing our research, along comes the state of Oregon and the Future Ready workforce announcements, and recognizing that there was some funding available to test different solutions. And so Mercy Flights, on behalf of all of the agencies in Southern Oregon that utilize EMTs and paramedics, agreed to register for a grant and to help build an EMS apprenticeship program. Next slide. We were fortunate to now have received both a Round 1 grant, which helped us to build the EMS apprenticeship program, as well as a Round 2 grant, which we're using right now to pilot the EMS apprenticeship program. Next slide, Guthrie. With the Round 1 development grant, we were able to hire program staff. And with that staff, we engaged a number of partners across Southern Oregon, including representatives from our high schools, from our local community college, from workforce development agencies, economic development agencies, as well as various fire departments and EMS organizations. We brought all these partners around the table to create this program collectively so that it helped to build the workforce for the entire Southern Oregon EMS system. In addition, the capacity grant also gave us the time and energy to be able to look for funding partners to launch this program, as well as to recruit employers. Mercy Flights and a number of our other fire agencies locally are now employers for the apprenticeship program. And in the first phase, as we developed this program, we also started recruiting candidates to go into the program. Next slide. With the second grant, we are excited to have launched our EMS apprenticeship program, which has 3 main elements. Those elements all work together to inspire, employ, educate, and support individuals that are pursuing a degree in EMS, including emergency medical technicians, as well as the associate degrees of paramedicine. In the inspire element of our program, we're really trying to cast a wide net to encourage people to become aware of careers in EMS. We're particularly focused on priority populations, women, low-income communities, individuals of communities of color, veterans. We're really trying to look at the underrepresented populations in the EMS field and trying to diversify the workforce. The second element of the program is focused on employing the apprentices. And much like a trades apprentice program, the individual is employed by one of our agencies and has a full-time job with benefits and is paid to go to school as well as work within the agency. Their education is completed at one of the local community colleges. In Southern Oregon, we're proud to have Rogue Community College as a very robust program for EMS and fire services. The fourth element is probably one of my favorite elements, and that's where we are going to coordinate all of the program, but more importantly, we support the apprentices regardless of where they're employed. They come together as a cohort, they help one another, and support one another as a community. Let me dig a little bit deeper into each of these elements to give you a flavor for the partnerships and the work that's being done in each of the elements. Next slide. In our Inspire element, the partnerships include our local high schools, our workforce partnership area company, as well as our community college. We're really looking at working with our high schools to inspire the next generation of youth to go into EMS. And we're working with our workforce development organizations to help inspire adults who are struggling to find their second careers. We do that through tours, by going into classrooms and providing EMS education. For the youth, students under 18, we have an Explorer program that is part of the Scouts of America. And then we provide ride-alongs and other forms of connections so people can explore whether or not this is a profession for them. In addition to those programs, we were really excited. We just launched our very first career technical education program with the Phoenix Talent High School. For those who are familiar with Southern Oregon, 4 years ago when the Almeida fires came through, this high school was significantly affected, and many of the students and their families lost their homes. So it's exciting for us to be able to support this high school and by bringing this education to these students. It's a partnership with Rogue Community College and our organization, Mercy Flights. Next slide. The recruit and employ apprentice section element, again, focuses on our fire agencies as employers. Mercy Flights as a mobile healthcare organization employs apprentices. And it is really an earn while you learn model. We've allowed the students to go to school, they get paid while they're going to school, and it really helps them to balance school, life, and work. Next slide. This portrait shows you a little bit of the on-ramps and off-ramps related to the program for both youth and adults as we inspire them to consider careers in EMS. There's a variety of different ways they come into the program. Anyone who goes on a tour or participates in any of our inspiration sections, we consider as a success to the program. A couple of other success measures for us are when individuals get their EMT license, and as well as individuals who end up continuing in their education, getting their 2-year associate's degree, and become a paramedic and getting their paramedic's license. Next slide. The last two elements of the program I mentioned earlier were our educate element and our support element. In our education elements, we really have 3 areas where we train and educate the apprentices. On the job training from day 1, they start getting the skills that they need either for fire departments or EMS agencies. Their formal education, of course, is an EMT certificate or paramedic associate's degree. Unique to our program, particularly because of the population that we're serving, we have a partnership with La Clinica, which is a federally qualified health center here in Southern Oregon, and they have an organization called Learning Well. And so all of our apprentices have additional access to education on resiliency, compassion fatigue, health equity, and life skills, including how to do interviews, how to do resumes. In addition, the Rogue Workforce Partnership also provides English as a second language, academic support, education, so that students who are perhaps not familiar with higher education or not prepared for higher education have the additional resources they need to be successful in higher ed. On the other side of this is the coordination support. I'd mentioned before the support groups that they have, but our local workforce partnership also helps to provide individuals who are struggling with childcare, housing and food insecurities, or any other challenges that they're having financially. Rogue Workforce Partnership has been a great partner in helping these individuals navigate so that they can remain in school and be successful. So as I close up this, I'll share a few outcomes. With our first year, we began with 13 apprentices. There was only 1 individual who was unable to complete the program in the first year. Of the 13, 7 were women, including a number of those in underrepresented communities. 5 of the apprentices completed the program in this year. 4 of them getting their paramedic degree, 1 their EMT degree. All 5 of those individuals are now in the workforce and are earning decent wages and benefits. 7 of the 12 apprentices went on to pursue their paramedic education and are continuing in the apprenticeship program. Besides the statistics, I think it's important to recognize the stories behind the individuals. A couple of weeks ago, we had a party for our first cohort and to celebrate their success. And one of the apprentices shared that she's a mother of 5, and she would have never been able to pursue an education as a mom and without the apprenticeship program. And so she's so grateful that she can work, earn a decent living, have benefits at the same time, and be able to go to school. Other apprentices also commented on if it weren't for the apprenticeship model, they never would have been able to afford going to school. And so the financial support that this model affords them is really making a difference to their ability to pursue their education. Next slide. So we're now in our second year of the program, and we're seeing even more success in this second year. The grant has funded 10 additional Apprentice 1 positions, which is essentially individuals who are pursuing their EMT certificate. We've got 10 Apprentice 2s, which are EMTs that are pursuing their paramedic degree. And 7 of those positions are coming from the first year and carrying over. So we really only had 3 spots to fill for this year. Our Inspire pillar or Inspire element of our program is really taking off. We had 75 applications received for this year for only 13 positions. So it was highly competitive. We narrowed that down to 35 individuals we interviewed. And we ended up selecting 10 Apprentice 1s. Those are individuals going for their EMT. We selected 5 additional alternatives. We are pursuing some additional funding, and we're hopeful to be able to fund those 5 additional alternates that have been named. 8 of those apprentices are women, 4 of which are traditionally unrepresented communities. And then we have 18 individuals pursuing their paramedic. And again, that was for 3 positions. And so we have 15 remaining well-qualified paramedic candidates. And we are looking for additional funding and pursuing that with employers and other grant opportunities. We're excited about the success that we're seeing with this model, and we're hopeful that we can continue pursuing it. Next slide. One other success measure that we are excited about is the partnership between Rogue Community College, our Mercy Flights, and Phoenix High School. We launched the Career Technical Education Program, where that brings education, college education, into the high school. This partnership allows for our staff to partner with the high school teacher, and we're doing an intro to EMS, which gives them a 4-credit college course through the College Now program. In addition, they will receive a basic life support and CPR certificates, which they can use for any other healthcare degrees that they decide to pursue after this course. When we developed this course, we were targeting about 20 students, thinking 20 students would be success if we could get them enrolled this fall. Much to our surprise and delight, we had over 70 students apply, and so we now have 3 classes running at the same time this fall for this program. Next slide. So as I finish today, I wanted to reflect on the Oregon Strategic Roadmap for Post-Secondary Education and Training. I was asked in this public testimony to both reflect on the contributions our EMS pilot project has had on this plan, as well as some of the barriers and opportunities. I won't go through all of them because of timing, be respectful of your agenda, But I'll just highlight, we're really proud of what we've done so far in the last couple of years with the grant funding, transforming and exploring a new way of delivering EMS education. I had the privilege of presenting and participating in the Talent Summit earlier this year, and I heard loud and clear from the Talent Summit presenters that addressing workforce challenges is going to require partnerships between K through 12, employers, higher ed, and our regional workforce development agencies. And I took that to heart, and I'm really proud of Southern Oregon and the agencies that we've all come together to build this together. And I think it does showcase that when we work together to impact the future workforce, we can be successful in that. The barriers that we've faced in this process have been some lack of information around how does career technical education programs work, how do apprenticeship models work. We've overcome some of that, but that has been one of those barriers that we had to deal with. Economic realities continue to face students, educational costs, as well as food, housing, childcare. We're fortunate to have partners who are helping our students be successful with those areas. And the last thing I would say in terms of advice to the HECC as well as to our state is keep doing what you're doing. The Future Ready Workforce Grants, in my eyes, in Southern Oregon, it's working. The support that we've got to kind of be incubator, these grants are helping us to test models that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise thought of. I just want to say thank you to the HECC and the Future Ready Workforce support team, Heather Anderson, who is our grant administrator, Sarah Foster, who I know you've already heard from today. The support we've been getting has been tremendous, and we're really excited about the work that's been done. With that, I will turn it back over to the chair and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start off, if that's okay, with questions. So I had not been familiar with this program. I'm very glad to hear it, and of course, the success you're having. Explain, I might have missed it, the relationship. Your employer is Mercy Flights, right? And Mercy Flights is coordinating all this, has pulled this coalition together. Would you please explain, go back a little bit and explain that, sort of your relationship and why Mercy Flights is doing this, and if I have that right.
Yeah, so Mercy Flights, so you can look at it, we wear two hats. One, we've taken on the hat of being the coordinator. And so as the coordinator, we're bringing all of the other employers, the education systems, all of the partners together on behalf of these apprentices to make the program work. That's one hat that we play. And then the other hat we play is as an employer. We are one of 4 or 5 employers right now who are responsible for taking the apprentices, employing them, and helping them through their educational process.
Thank you. And do you work full-time on this?
So I have one staff member at Mercy Flights who works full-time on the program and coordinating all of the elements of the program, including the career technical education component.
Very good. Thank you. Questions? Anyone else? Oh, thank you. Commissioner Andrews.
Hi, thank you for your detailed and inspiring presentation. Through my work in tribal healthcare, I'm distinctly aware of the extreme cost of these services to rural Oregon and other areas throughout the United States. And I want to thank you for building that capacity in this way. And I think it shows directly how the work of the HECC and the state of Oregon support in these programs to build capacity can really affect people on the ground. It's having an effect on families directly because of, first of all, access to this resource, and then, making it more accessible, breaking down those financial barriers, because we know that when there is more capacity, the cost is generally less. And some of those financial barriers are really crippling to people in rural communities. So I'm going to also ask that I noticed you had some tribal student participation. And if you haven't already, do you have any plans to propose partnerships with tribal governments in Southern Oregon who may be also able to help build capacity for you in lots of different ways? And I just want to encourage that because I think there's opportunities there.
Thank you for that question. Yes, indeed, we have a number of conversations in the works with different tribal communities. Coquille tribe is one that we've advanced a little bit further than others, but definitely a model that partnering with the tribal communities, we can bring this model into those communities and help provide access to those types of careers. I definitely see that as an opportunity for expansion. I'll just also comment on the rural communities. Our rural communities in Oregon are struggling immensely with having enough EMTs and paramedics, and there are a lot of closures of ambulance services as well as fire agencies struggling to get these medical professionals into the communities. And so the more we can advance this type of a model in our state and produce more and more EMTs and paramedics, the more it will help those rural communities have the resources that they need. Oftentimes, EMTs and paramedics in small communities are really the connection point to healthcare. And without them, individuals' health and well-being can be severely affected.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Thank you very much for being here, Ms. Glow. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I just wanted to thank you also for this presentation and very detailed and obviously a much needed program. You spoke briefly about pursuing other funding avenues, and I wondered if you might expand on that a little bit or give us an idea of where your challenges are. We know it's a challenging budget year going forward, and just talk a little bit more about that if you can. Thank you.
Certainly. So we've put in for several different grants, a couple of the state grants for youth development grants. We also put in for a grant through the University of Delaware. They are looking at diversifying the EMS workforce, and we're hopeful that that grant will be announced within the next few weeks. In addition, we eventually want this to really be stood up by employers and less about grant funding. I think we're in a space right now that we're trying to get enough data to be able to help substantiate that this is really an excellent way for employers to have a pipeline of future workforce. Mercy Flights is starting to create a white paper to be able to demonstrate that you can fund this effectively and use it as a pipeline for the future employees in your organization. And so we're hopeful for some funding for the next couple of years to be able to get enough data to create that demonstration and continue to get employers on board. I recognize that the trades industries have apprenticeship programs, and the trades understand that that's the way that they continue to have employees within their workforce. And so we're trying to test that same model and create the sustainability of it.
Thank you again for being here and for your contribution to the workforce.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Kyle Thomas, we're ready for you if you're ready for us.
Chair Rowe, Member of the Commission, Kyle Thomas, Director of Legislative and Policy Affairs for HECC. Before I start, I'll take just a quick moment of personal privilege. I think that the yawning chasm that is left by the departure. Do I need to start over?
No.
I think that the yawning chasm that's left by the departure or the closure of OSA is probably pretty evident in the advocacy space. But I'll just say that I feel the same about losing Nick Kehoe personally, who has before the closure been tireless in his efforts and activities to try and rebuild OSA, and was having some success in bringing student governments and institutions back into the OSA fold. So, you know, I'll just say, if you're looking for a passionate, compassionate, strategic, and hardworking advocate, you can do a heck of a lot worse than Nick Kehoe. And he's out of the room giving a media interview right now, so he's not hearing me say this, but I hope he'll see it later. He's going to take some time to decompress, but I certainly hope to see him again very soon. And with that, I'll start.
Thank you for adding that. I really appreciate your perspective on it.
Yeah, thank you. So going into my regular update, so the legislature was active in the month of September for their typical legislative days period of hearings and meetings. And as usual, we participated in those activities, both formally and informally. On the House of Representatives side of the building, Ben provided an update on the implementation of transfer law, similar to the presentation we gave to the Senate Education Committee in May. This presentation expressed that progress towards developing transfer maps is accelerating, but that capacity and communications issues are points of weakness that do merit addressing long term. And generally, members were very appreciative of the progress that is being made. Also, Erin Rao and Kyra King from our OSAC office provided updates on the use of the free application for federal student aid, showing that Oregon is largely closing the gaps that appeared due to the highly publicized major issues with the new form and methodology of need calculation that was implemented by the U.S. Department of Education for this current academic year. The department has since announced that the next FAFSA cycle will begin on December 1st, allowing the department additional time to ensure the reliability of the form and related processes. Some national organizations representing states and institutions requested this delay in order to have a greater assurance of a smooth application cycle in the coming year. In the Senate Education Committee, Erin and Kyra also presented on financial aid information specifically related to the Oregon Promise. This program is continually popular with legislators, and it's likely to be the subject of legislation in the coming year to expand eligibility and purpose. Some ideas we're hearing include eliminating the GPA requirement, expanding eligibility to all community college students regardless of the recency of their graduation or their passage of the GED exams, and opening doors to applied baccalaureate students to participate. Partners also provided information to legislative committees during this period. The Oregon Community College Association provided an update to the House on the rollout of RN to BSN programs newly allowed through the statutory change made by the legislature in 2023. It's clear the House Committee on Higher Ed wants this work to accelerate and for the number and size of cohorts to increase. During this presentation, the college has also indicated there is initial consideration and planning of offering applied baccalaureate programs in education-related professions soon. Ben and Sarah a little bit touched on the revenue and budget forecast. I won't go over that in any detail. I'll just point out that a written summary of those items are in your docket. Which also presents all of the legislative concepts that are currently in the final stages of drafting by Legislative Council for introduction in 2025. I will not review them all today, but I'll call your attention to one additional item that is new since the last report, and that's the last item in that section of the docket, LC number 508. This concept proposes to take over from the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, a grant program they've operated for culturally and linguistically diverse education administrator candidates. This mirrors a program that HECC currently runs for similar aspiring teachers, and the purpose of the transfer is to improve the administration of that program and to house financial aid opportunities all within the HECC. At an upcoming commission meeting, I'll preview the 2025 legislative session by providing an update on sort of all of the concepts we're hearing might be topics of conversation when the legislature convenes, including those that are being sponsored by legislators themselves or by advocates that we work with in this space. Lastly, just a quick note, in line with the increasing focus towards economic development and workforce opportunities in the draft strategic plan you're examining tomorrow, I'm happy to say we're in the middle of recruiting for a position that will increase HEC's legislative affairs capacity with a focus on being the first point of agency tracking for workforce initiatives. As the governor has maintained a strong workforce development focus and as the legislature has put increasing time, attention, and funding into specific workforce development opportunities and issues, the number of initiatives and committees that HEC has needed to track has really grown beyond our current capacity. So this position will hopefully provide us with some of the resources needed to become more involved in these critical workforce conversations, as well as to separately increase partner engagement in our administrative rulemaking processes. That concludes my report.
That was a fast run through.
It's always an exercise in taking out of my report the items people have already said throughout the meeting.
Yes, and we've read it. I'm just trying to make sure that you didn't skip over anything. Questions for Kyle? It's always a fine report, Kyle. Thank you. It's always. Questions? Okay, you're done. Thank you very much, sir, for all your work. And I listened in on the Legislative Days report to the House Subcommittee, and the legislators asked a lot of questions and were very interested, especially in the aid and how it was going. And as Kyle expressed, there was a lot of interest, and at least one legislator speaking up and hoping for greater speed and capacity in the RN to BSN program. So. But they were all there and quite engaged in the entire presentation. So thank you for that and organizing that also, Kyle. Okay. We are on a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 2:30. Okay, commissioners, we are back in session momentarily. I have a very cranky back. Forgive me, I'm going to stand up during part of the rest of the meeting and part of tomorrow. I'm waiting to see if our remote commissioners are back on. Can you tell if they're in listening mode? Well, there we go. Okay, and while we were on break, we have possibly changed around the agenda. If we finish early enough, then we're going to move one of the rule changes, the permanent rule change on the common course numbering. Is that the one? We'll move that to later this afternoon if there is time to give us more time tomorrow. But right now we're doing the pathways, and the first one is the report on the developmental education in the community colleges. And that's a data and work group. They just stood up as a group and came forward. Thank you, Amy. Are you going to start us off?
I am, and it's almost like we work for a coordinating body, huh?
Almost.
Good afternoon, Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Heyman, members of the commission. Welcome, Commissioner Middleton. For the record, my name is Amy Cox. Can you hear me? Is this working? Are we good? Okay. And I'm the Director of the Office of Research and Data at the HECC. With me is Shonda Halawapo, also from the Office of Research and Data, and Donna Llewellyn from the Office of Community College and Workforce Development. We are here to talk with you about developmental education. Shonda and I are going to give you some research results from a study that our office did on developmental education, and Donna is going to describe a work group that is underway. Next slide, please. And just to make sure we're sort of all on the same basic page, this slide really just talks about what developmental education is. Developmental education is a set of coursework that is designed to enable students to become college ready. These would be college students who are already in college, but are not college ready on a particular subject. Often that subject is math, but it may also be reading or writing. And students may test into a particular level below college level, and then take that developmental education sequence, course sequence, to get them up to college level. The current way that it is conducted is that those developmental education courses are completed prior to a student taking a college level course. Most of this coursework occurs, the vast majority of this coursework occurs at the community colleges who offer a range of developmental education courses. And students who take developmental education courses who do not test at college level might do so for a number of different reasons. They may have come from a K-12 background that did not prepare them sufficiently. They may have been out of the classroom for quite some time and simply need a refresher. And so that's what developmental education is. In the spring, and we'll talk about, Donna will really talk about this at the end, there was a statute passed that called for a work group on some new models, to look at some new models of developmental education. And this study that we're going to present today is really designed to help support that work group. So that's what we'll talk about. Next slide, please. What we are going to talk about on the research portion of this, which is the majority of this presentation, really looks at developmental math. And we chose developmental math because it is the most common. 2 out of every 3 courses, developmental education courses, are math courses. And so math, if we can get a sense of what's happening with developmental math, we'll have a sense of what's happening as a whole. We're going to look at who are the students served by developmental ed, how are they faring? In other words, is developmental education achieving that goal of making students college ready? And what does that all mean for the state of Oregon? Just a couple notes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shonda to talk about the students, is that this study looks at a subset of community college students. So we did not look at every community college student who might be in developmental math. We looked at the students who are taking primarily lower division collegiate courses. So that means the courses that lead you to an associate degree or to transfer to a bachelor's degree granting institution. We did not include students who take primarily career technical education, and that's because those career technical education programs do not always require college level math. And so it sort of very much muddies the water. How it's not necessarily reasonable to expect that they would be taking college level math if their program does not require it. So this is very specifically focused on lower division collegiate taking students. It's not quite right, but lower division collegiate course taking students. And we start with their first math class, and whether that was math at the college level or whether it was math 1 level below college level, 2 levels below college level, or 3 levels below college level. So with that, I'm gonna, next slide, ask Shonda to describe the students.
So we're looking at the first question, which is who is served by developmental education? So we took the data with the students that Amy had just described and looked at data from 2008-9 to 2022-23. Next slide, please. And see that more than half of our community college students in Oregon start in developmental math. 68% in Oregon, 68% in Oregon of these students start in developmental math. Compare this nationally, and it's 60% of community college students are placed in developmental math. It's really important for us all to understand that for what's going on in Oregon is not different than what's happening nationally. So we wanted to make that point. Next slide, please. Throughout this presentation, the green is always going to represent college level. And then you can see that the lighter brown is 1 level below college level. The darker brown is 2 levels below college level, and the navy blue is 3 levels below college level. It looks like there is a higher proportion, and there actually is a higher proportion of students who are beginning in math at the college level increasingly. However, I really want you to think about 3 different trends that are happening during the same timeline. Again, this is a national concern, and so in about 2013-14, community colleges in Oregon decided that we needed to do something different about developmental education. And so some of that may have something to do with it. The other, another trend is that community college enrollment overall after the Great Recession really did decline significantly. Also, especially in post-pandemic, we have a booming, a strong economy that high demand, low skill workers can really find livable wage jobs. So it may drive differences in trying to get a college education. So as we look over these next slides, I'm going to put all of the data together. So 2008-9 to 2022, and we'll also look at it in terms of the second question as well. So what I'd like you to think about throughout this is the drop in developmental education may also reflect that our students who are not college ready may not be applying. So just taking that. Next slide, please. %31% of students throughout that whole time frame, so about 15 years, their first math class they took was in college level math. Consider, or I want to point out for Black and African American students, it was 16%. For Native American and Alaska Native students, it was 19%. You can see that over half of these two communities of students are testing 3 levels below college level, or at least taking their first math class 3 levels below college level. Next slide, please. There is a significant disparity in age. We often define non-traditional students by age as 25 and older, and you can see that students 25 and older are not beginning taking their first math class in college level. As a matter of fact, almost 3 in 4 students 51 and older are starting 3 levels below college level. Next slide, please.
You can go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so help me understand. So I see percentages, but what does that mean in actual numbers?
Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know what the actual N is of the 31%. So does that make sense to you?
It's, okay, so the total population is 181 something, so about 180,000 is in 2008, 9, all the way to 22, 23.
Okay.
So this represents all of them. I can't remember the specific number, but I know that it was.
Well, that helps me because I can understand percentages, but I don't know what the percentage of what, right? And then the other thing that probably would be helpful, my understanding of what college level math may be different than others. And so college level math is considered to be algebra, is that correct? Is it like a 100 level math class?
Okay, so it is a non-CTE math class that is over the 100 level.
Right. So when we're saying 3 levels below, we're talking like math 70, math 50, math.
I think it's math 60, yes.
Okay.
Well, and that's not universal across all of the community colleges. Oregon, years ago, all the community colleges identified their specific course number below college level. And so it didn't matter if PCC's course number was different than another one. What mattered to us is that they classified this particular math course as 3 levels below college level. So then before we started to do the analysis, I double checked in all the IR folks and said, is this data still accurate for the math courses? Because there's been a lot of changes, and 100%. They said that those were all still true. Yes. Okay. We also see some disparities by rural and urban. Although when we looked into it further, we don't know how much are really attributable to the geographic area, or each college has different placement, strategies and policies and procedures. So and I'll just leave it there. Next slide, please. We do see a higher percent of women starting their math in developmental education compared to men. So next slide. So overall, although the rates of people beginning math and developmental education has dropped, and we really want to point out the disparities in this. African American, Black students, Native American, Alaska Native, older students, and female women students have higher rates of starting math in developmental ed. So how are we faring? Is the trend line declining for people starting in developmental math? Is that making some kind of difference? And Amy's going to share with you the data about, is developmental education math achieving its goal?
Thank you, Shonda. I want to point out that everything I say from here forward, the reason we put this whole first section in here is to emphasize to you that everything from here after is going to affect the communities highlighted there more, right? So we're not going to do breakouts from here on forward, but everything we'll show will be sort of emphasized as affecting the experiences of and the outcomes for Black students, Native American students, women students, and older students, much more than for their counterparts. So next slide, please.
Amy, before you go forward, are these students, how many, are they self-identified, or are they, and at what point are they identified and targeted for this?
That is really, for developmental math?
Yes.
That is a great question, Chair Rowe. Thank you for asking. Students, when they go to enroll, practices do differ across the colleges. Typically, when they go to enroll in a math class or in a program that requires a college level math, they'll have to take a placement test. And then that placement test determines what class they can enroll in. Commissioner Middleton?
Isn't it also true, though, that many of the colleges, Rogue including, are using multiple measures? So looking at previous math that they've taken and saying, you've seen this, we can start you here.
Yes, Commissioner Middleton, that is true. Increasingly, we do hear about practices at the colleges using multiple methods of placement, not only a placement test, thank you, I should have said that, but also transcript data and prior math taking. So in other words, if you had never taken algebra, or if you had taken multiple algebra classes, you wouldn't be placed into an algebra class, you would be placed above that. This first set of slides, were there other questions? No. Shows the percentage of students who started in developmental math and completed that college level math course across the years. And what we see here is that even though there were those differences in that Shonda showed in who started at college level, who started at developmental level, what we see here is that about half of students across all of the years who started somewhere in developmental math completed college level math. I will note that we used completion of college level math here and not attempted, not just enrolled in college level math as the indicator of whether you became college ready, because dropout rates, withdrawal rates can be higher for those who started in developmental math. Next slide, please. This rate varies by whether you started 1, 2, or 3 levels below. So that light brown line again, the light brown bars, about 2/3 of students in the most recent year completed who started one level below college level, completed college level math. About half of the students who started 2 levels below completed college level math. And about 1 out of every 3 students who started 3 levels below completed college level math. And then within each of those levels, the percentage completing college math has actually dropped over time. Next slide. This shows the percentage of students who go on to earn that associate degree or transfer to a bachelor's degree granting institution. Students who begin in developmental math are less likely to graduate or transfer. We used a 4-year time window as we do for our regular community college completion and transfer rate. So in other words, we took students from the moment where they started taking 4 credit courses and tracked them for 4 years. Those who started 1 level below college level, that light brown line, are pretty close to the students whose first math class was college level. But for those who started 2 and 3 levels below, their completion and transfer rates were much lower. Next slide. And then this shows time, the time it took in years, the number of years it took to, on average, for students who did complete within that 4-year window, how long it took them on average. And here what we see is that those who started in college level took the lowest amount of time, 2.3 years. Those who started at the lowest levels took more like 3 years to complete. And that additional 1 to 2 terms, of course, has financial aid impacts, affordability impacts, also completion impacts. Next slide. So if we put it all together, for every 10 students who started in developmental math, 5 completed the developmental math sequence, 4 of them completed college level math, and 2 of them went on to graduate or transfer within 4 years. We tracked this number across a few recent cohorts. Of course, the most recent cohorts are all affected by COVID. So we said, well, we weren't really sure if that was accurate. So then we looked at a pre-COVID cohort and found that the numbers were almost identical. The only thing that was different was one was 39% completed college level and one was 41, but they were surprisingly close. Next slide, please. Another way that we sort of put all this together was that, as I said earlier, 2 out of every 3 developmental education courses are in math. But the odds of earning that degree or transferring to a bachelor's degree granting institution drops by 28% for every level below college level math that a student begins. So if you're starting 3 levels below, that's 28 times 3. Don't ask me to do that in my head right now. Or in another way, students who complete college level math were 7 times more likely to earn that degree or transfer to a bachelor's degree granting institution.
Amy, excuse me, remind us of the overall percentage of students, of entering students who finish, who get a degree from community college or transfer.
For our credential seeking cohort overall, which is slightly different group of students,
Yep.
right? Because it includes CTE students,
Right.
and it includes students who may have completed a shorter term certificate. It's about 50%. About 50% of students who are credential seeking earn a credential or transfer to a 4-year institution within 4 years. It might be 51, but it's quite close.
So is it too much of a leap to say that therefore this group has a heavy overlap with other students who are not able, for whatever reason, to persist in community college?
Yes, it is. That is a reasonable, there is a strong overlap between this group and that credential seeking cohort. And so those who are not able to complete that credential or transfer within 4 years among all community college students, many of those who did not complete would be in this developmental education.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So what we've seen here is that most students who start in developmental math do not complete college math, and fewer graduate. And they are 7 times less likely to graduate or transfer than those who start at the college level. If they do complete, it takes longer. And so then the question is, what does this all mean? Not only for the students, but which is what we've already talked about, but for the state as a whole. Next slide. This is, again, a summary. Most students who began in developmental math did not complete. I don't need to reread that. This impacts students who are older and students who identify as Black, as Native American, disproportionately, and as women. So therefore, despite the efforts that we hear about regularly, even though we're in the Office of Research and Data, we hear about them. Despite the efforts of students and faculty alike, the courses that have been designed to set students on that college path often are resulting in barriers and a lack of credentials. Next slide. This is happening against a backdrop of other equity gaps in completion and transfer. Related to your question, Chair Rowe, completion and transfer rates are significantly different by race, ethnicity, geography, age, gender, other groups, and similar gaps that we've observed in developmental math combined with this limited effectiveness obstructs the efforts to try to close those overall completion and transfer rates. Next slide. It also exists against a backdrop of population and enrollment trends that are affecting the state's economy. So Oregon's population is getting older with a growing share of adults above age 50. Oregon's economy, as you know, is projected from adult attainment conversations that we have with you. Oregon's economy is projected to need many more adults with post-secondary credentials than we currently have. And so some of the workers that Oregon is going to need in the next decade will need to be adults with new post-secondary credentials. But again, as you know, from the adult attainment conversations that we have had, not enough Oregon adults are earning new credentials to meet the needs of the economy. Community college enrollment has fallen much more sharply among older adults than among younger ones. And older adults are less likely to be college ready and more likely to need developmental education. And what we've seen in this set of results is that the limited effectiveness of developmental education as it currently exists, at least, is lowering the chance that those adults who are pursuing those credentials will actually complete them. Next slide. So again, to summarize, despite the efforts of students and faculty alike, developmental math at least does not appear to be meeting its goals. And this in turn limits student success, student completion, and Oregon's economic and educational goals above and beyond students' economic and educational goals. With that, I'm going to turn to Donna and ask her, next slide, to describe the work group and the task in front of it.
Yeah, so earlier this year, the Senate Bill 1552 passed requiring the HECC to convene a work group to study evidence-based co-requisite student support models and submit a report of the findings to the HECC by December 15th. The findings in that report need to address the following points. So determining whether to require community colleges to implement evidence-based co-requisite student support models, identify the steps and resources required to transition from traditional prerequisite developmental education to evidence-based co-requisite student support models, determining whether evidence-based co-requisite student support models should be funded by the Community College Support Fund, identify any statutory changes or administrative rule changes necessary, and identify how to determine if a person should participate in a co-requisite and whether participation should be voluntary or mandatory. There is a group that is currently meeting and working on this. Next slide, please. And this is the membership. We are co-staffing this group with the Oregon Community College Association, so myself and Elizabeth Cox Brand. And we have college students. We also have community college faculty teaching co-requisite or developmental education. We also have faculty teaching at the first college level. We have faculty union, and we also have presidents, chief academic officers, and also making sure that we're reaching back to adult basic skills and also student services. So we have a robust group who are meeting, and later this month we'll actually start talking about their first draft of possible recommendations to come forward to the commission later in December. And with that, I think we're ready to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Yamasaki.
Oh, this is very sobering to me. And I guess a couple things come to mind. Conversations with K through 12. Because this is an outcome of some K through 12 performance, I would guess. My other question would be, would it be a big leap in assumption that if someone is in developmental math, they're probably in other developmental classes also? Would that be correct? Or is that fair to say? Or would you say math really is the barrier, not English?
Commissioner Yamasaki, thank you for that question. It's a great question. Students who are in developmental math are not necessarily in other math, other developmental education courses. I can't remember, among the credential seeking cohort, I think 2/3 of students are in developmental math, 1/3 of students are in writing, and less than that in reading, or I may have those flipped, but the proportions are much smaller.
Yes, Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. I was just wondering too, especially looking at working with ODE on this, if we're looking at potentially, it wouldn't for the older students who are going back, but the other ones at the degree diploma requirements in Oregon for levels of math, and what that instruction looks like at the high school level. I just know that it's a struggle at that high school level right now too, and looking at different ways of instructing it. Coming from an alt ed background, like we had to change the way we taught, and I don't know if that's being looked at as well to make sure that the math curriculum at the community college is also relevant to the students who are coming in. And I don't know.
Commissioner Martinez, there is significant work underway with collaboration with ODE around math pathways and math requirements, and with the public institutions. That said, I think I would say to both you and Commissioner Yamasaki that, you know, math education predates high school too, right? Like the high school, you spoke well to the high schools maybe struggling. And also, you know, I don't doubt there is work to be done at the K-12 level. I anecdotally could speak to that for quite some time. And at the same time, one of the things that really struck us in these results, and quite frankly, we went into this without an enormous number of priors, you know, without an enormous number of expectations. We knew some things, but one of the things that really struck us was the extraordinary levels of developmental math among returning adult students. Mm-hmm. And so in addition, I would say, not instead of, but in addition to partnerships with K-12, we are not serving our adult students in math in the way that that they need to be served. And in a way, I would say, on a personal level, I know they can be served. I've never tutored any person in math of any age who did not get it. It is eminently feasible to teach math. I am not saying that it is, I am not at all saying that our teachers are not, every math teacher I've met has in the state at the community college level has always been saying and doing really great things. But there's something about this, the situation that we currently have that isn't leading to the outcomes that we need.
Thank you. And thank you for this very detailed report. Sobering, I think, is a good word for it. And I also I thank you for your remarks just now about the eminent possibility that it is possible for students to learn math. And I think there is something that needs to be overcome in like this idea that math is somehow this big mystery, and either you're good at math or you're bad at math, and that's like end of story. So I completely agree with you, and thank you for raising that and bringing that out into the open. My question, I just wanted to get some clarification, and maybe I probably missed this, but is math required for all AA degrees, and or what kinds of programs are and degree programs are impacted by this? And so that's one question. And then a follow-up question is, has there been consideration about how students may be choosing other kinds of programs that maybe aren't not the ones they want to do because they are having to enroll in developmental math or having a fear of math? So I guess those are two separate but related questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Simnett. We certainly hear anecdotal evidence that students make program choices based on course requirements, including math requirements. So certainly we do hear that. And to your first question, most associate degrees at the lower division collegiate level, and I ask Donna to chime in here, or Shonda also, who have different community college experiences than I have, require a college level math course. Now, associate degrees in career and technical education, I'm not as confident in saying, but associate degrees, what we were including here for lower division collegiate, associate degrees in liberal arts and sciences, associate degrees in nursing, require a college level math.
For the CTE degrees, it's college level, but it'd be contextualized math. So it would be less, algebra,
Less theoretical.
less theoretical math, but more applied math.
Commissioner Simnett, I will confess that as someone who took a logic class in the philosophy department to get out of college math, approximately 55 or 60 years ago, it was still, how do I get around this? Thank you very much for that question.
I'm an English major.
Me too, but I know.
I have lived.
Logic, I've got logic now. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. I was just having thoughts about the work group, and it says that the work group is studying different models of developmental education, and they're still, I'm sure, in it. But I'm wondering what kind of questions they're asking about this. Is it pedagogy? Is it tips and tricks? Is it, what is the scope?
Yeah, Commissioner Smith, it's a little bit of everything. The group has really asked some in-depth questions about what makes co-requisite supports work. What could those models look like? What are other states doing? What can we learn from other states, those who have gone before us in this space? So there's been a lot of conversation. We've presented a lot of information, and we're also using a facilitator who also has a background in co-requisite and developmental education redesign. So it's a whole lot of conversation for sure.
And I think I would just add, thank you, Donna, that one of the things that is always frustrating for us in the Office of Research and Data is that the data we have are backward looking, right? We get student records and course records once they're complete, right? So we had hoped to be able to compare some co-requisites, some maybe early adopters in Oregon of colleges doing co-requisite where you're placed directly into college level math and you have supplemental teaching alongside. But there weren't any yet in the data that we had. So perhaps in the future we can come and do an update, but we lack that at the moment.
Okay, we're going to move along in just a minute, but Commissioner Devlin has a question, and then I have a closing question, and Commissioner Middleton. So then we're going to wrap up after that. Commissioner Devlin.
Madam Chairman, just to express a personal opinion, the diploma requirements in Oregon in mathematics are very low. They require simply three credits in math at an eligible 1 level or above. That's the total requirements. Now, a lot of students go beyond that, but one of the problems I think there is the system basically allows students to move out of mathematics way too early in their academic careers, not knowing how much they're limiting their prospects in the future in terms of their academic pursuits or their career pursuits. The only other thing that I think is, from a practical standpoint, Madam Chair, I'm like you, it's been quite a number of years. I think the average 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old adult who hasn't had to use mathematics other than maybe balancing their checkbook or looking at their investments would have a hard time in even geometry and trigonometry, let alone calculus.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Devlin. Commissioner Middleton.
So thank you for your report. I look forward to hearing what the work group comes up with. I saw some really good names there. That's going to be a good group. On behalf of math teachers in the state of Oregon, we do not fail students lightly. And I think that, yes, it's a sobering report. You know, some of the worst days for students when taking math may be test day, and some of the worst days for teachers are grading day. So I know personally that every math teacher I know is doing everything they can. I think there are more reasons than developmental at math is not serving our students. I understand that statement, and I'm not critiquing it. I'm just saying sometimes students who are over the age of 25 are coming back to school to pick up a class or two. They're not necessarily degree seeking. Community college especially sees a lot of lifelong learners who are coming just to shore up, or they want to take that algebra class because they remembered kind of liking it in high school. And now they just want to see how they do. So just to speak to that, I will look at this presentation a bit more closely because I had some more questions about going deeper into the data. And I do think that there's room for co-requisite model on some college level courses, but not the calculus level. Those students are going to build our bridges. They're going to be responsible for many higher level thinking that they need all of those basic steps in order to get there. So again, thank you for your report.
Thank you, Commissioner Middleton. And we'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with you.
I'd love that.
One thing you said just pointed out to me something I should have said is that, you know, we have data on students and courses and course grades and, you know, degrees, credentials. We don't have data on students on many parts of the why.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed.
So I'm describing this. I'm not explaining, I want to be clear, why these outcomes are happening. Because we can't speak to that in the data. We hear, and anecdotally, you know, that, and certainly we can understand that there's a momentum, I don't know what the word is, but, you know, there's a level of commitment that is pretty big to slog through 3 classes before you could get to one that would be applying to your program. And, you know, that isn't about the teaching or the students. That's about the sequencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just as one potential explanation that's not in the data, I guess I want to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Llewellyn, you can probably predict my question. So in terms of when the study group releases a report, if it requires more prerequisite or a program throughout, how long is the process? If we're going to have, I know we have some experiments in co-requisite with some early positive, at least anecdotal potentially evidence, but at least anecdotal encouragement. How long would it take for community college students to see co-requisite availability across the system?
Madam Chair, I think it will vary based upon where the community college is in their present implementation of co-requisite redesign. Many of the colleges are already on the road to implementing co-requisite models. So for them, they're already starting this work. For others, there will be some needing to, you know, do some professional development and do some curricular redesign. But I anticipate, because there are many who have gone before, that if the recommendations that come out of the work group are such that, we need to make changes and make some additional implementations. I anticipate the colleges will be ready to step into this space and embrace the recommendations made by the work group and whatever might be endorsed or enforced by the commission. And it looks like Ben has something to add.
Yes, please, Ben.
Donna's exactly right in terms of the colleges and their readiness to move forward, and they're at different places on this. I will note, and careful reading of that final slide that describes the work group charge indicates a couple of recommendations that could come to the commission for state level action, including about how to fund developmental education or not to fund developmental education, how to fund co-requisite as a potential alternative. That is, at least in part, could be a HECC level decision, giving your responsibility for the funding allocation formula for community colleges. Likewise, the work group charge asks the group to consider any statutory changes or administrative rule changes that could be necessary in order to improve developmental education or fund or advance co-requisite based models. So a big part of the reason for having this conversation with the commission today is to start to steep you in what may be coming in terms of recommendation for commission level action, or even without the work group, this commission is empowered to move forward as it sees fit in the exercise of its authorities, including funding authorities for community colleges. So there is some opportunity, and likely this will be on future agendas for you.
Good. We will be eager to see it on a future agenda.
Question?
Yes, you may.
So we've been focused on the community colleges doing developmental ed. Is it fair to say that none of the universities are doing developmental math?
Commissioner Yamasaki, that is a question that we do get. It's a very small percentage that occurs at the universities. It's very small. I would describe it as negligible.
Okay.
Do they send them to the community colleges?
Well, there are.
That's right.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to see. But the eligibility requirements for the universities eliminate some of that, certainly. Yeah, I'd have to ask the universities further.
Okay. Thank you, all three, very much. It was very helpful, and we look forward to next steps. Now we're going to look at again, one of the reports we requested, the trends and program approvals for community colleges and public universities. And Donna Llewellyn stays in her chair because she loves questions for me, and Veronica Dujon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rowe, members of the Commission. For the record, I am Veronica Dujon, and I'm the Director for Academic Policy and Authorization. And I don't know if Donna needs to introduce herself again, but there
I'm
she
here
is.
again.
Thank you. So the presentation Donna and I have today is informational, and it focuses on program approval trends. What we will do essentially is highlight trends in types of programs approved, the differences in program needs across institutions, and the evolving landscape of higher education, how programmatic priorities have shifted to meet student, institutional, regional, and workforce needs. For the public universities, these trends cover the period since the inception of the HECC. So we're really talking about the period from 2014. It does not present a comprehensive view of program or degree mix at the public universities, but rather focus just narrowly on new program approvals since the inception of the HECC. The community college data, by contrast, represents all state-approved certificates and degree programs, including some that were approved as far back as 1960. So just for some context, the HECC was established in 2011 by the legislature to oversee and coordinate the state's higher education institutions. In 2013, HECC's role expanded when the university governing boards were created, giving public universities more autonomy. However, HECC retained oversight responsibilities, particularly in approving academic programs, ensuring they align with state priorities, workforce needs, and economic development goals. Through its program approval process, HECC plays a critical role in shaping the academic offerings of public universities in Oregon. The program approval process manages for program overlap and statewide efficiency, and the process we have is designed to account for institutional competition and statewide needs. And at the end of the slides, there is actually two sets of slides, one that attempts to capture what we do on the community college side, and one, the flow of how we do it for the public universities. It's important to note that the program closures, anytime there are program closures or suspensions by our public universities, these are handled independently by the governing boards, and there is no statewide centralized tracking system. So we do not keep track at the HECC of any closures that might take place. So if we can have the first slide, please. What we have here is an overview of recent trends in public university program approvals from the period 2014 to 2024 across all institutions. So this is a summary of what's happening across all institutions. What you will notice, and we took a look at the programs that had come through, and we attempt to group them by thematic areas or disciplinary areas. There are 160 programs that have come through, a little over 160. And you will notice there's a growing focus on STEM disciplines. And within STEM, we see programs like data science, environmental science, bioengineering, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. We also see similar trends in the social sciences and humanities like social work, professional studies in the deaf community, social justice and the arts, and construction management. So for members of the commission who have been on the commission for a while, this might jog your memory about the kinds of programs that have come before you for approval. Next slide, please. What we have here is the degrees that have been produced by institution and by degree type. So for the bachelor's, the master's, and the doctoral levels. We've had about 90, a little over 90 new undergraduate programs across our institutions, and you see the general breakdown here by institutions, and 70 new, a little over 70 new graduate programs. At Oregon's public universities, we see significant growth in key fields, as I have indicated, like data science, healthcare, environmental science, and that's driven by demand for these specialized expertise. The expansion also highlights workforce demand for healthcare and social sciences, particularly in areas like student mental health, data analysis, and social work. Next slide, please. Oregon continues to see expansion in those STEM fields, and what we have done here is try to give you a breakdown by particular areas across the public universities. Institutions are increasingly offering degrees in those STEM areas, bioengineering, cybersecurity, as they respond to the growing demand for technological skills. And regionally, we've seen an expansion of programs in healthcare, education, and rural sustainability that are designed to build local expertise and address regional challenges. I will note, as we review those program approvals as they come through, you will notice many or some of these program areas are not strict disciplinary areas, and they tend to pull in courses from different disciplines. And the creation of these new programs do not necessarily mean starting from scratch, but a repackaging of courses that are already in existence across departments to create these new programs. Next slide, please. So here we have the new program approvals for that 10-year period, and we have shown it according to two groupings that we use when we do our university evaluations, for example, the three larger institutions and what happens at our technical regional institutions. When we compare the three larger institutions, and that would be U of O, Oregon State, and Portland State, with what's happening at the regional institutions, we did observe some trends. The bigger institutions are leading the charge in STEM-related programs, for example, in bioengineering, robotics, and data science. In contrast, the regional universities show a more balanced growth, perhaps, with expansion in both STEM and non-STEM areas like arts, humanities, and social sciences, which cater to their regional needs. So when we look at the programs that have been produced over that 10-year period, we do see focus on sustainability, healthcare, and emerging technologies to support the state's both long-term and long-term economic and environmental needs. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague Donna, who will talk about the program trends on the community college side.
Thank you, Veronica. So the program approval process was shared at the last commission meeting, but I wanted to remind the commission of what they approve and what you have delegated to staff to approve. After staff review, the commission reviews and approves any standalone awards, so the Associate of Applied Science, Associate of Science degrees, etc. Career pathway certificates, related certificates, and non-credit training certificates are reviewed and approved by HECC staff on behalf of the commission. In Oregon, career and technical education programs are aligned to 6 career clusters, and they're showed on the screen. They represent large groups of training and education programs. As you'll see in the next several slides, community college programs are grouped by career clusters and credits. Next slide, please. So as Veronica noted, these are totals currently on file. So they're from the beginning of time. I'm just kidding. We just have files back to 1960. And as programs come through and need changes, et cetera, like what you saw today on your agenda, we make updates. But to meet labor market demand and create multiple on and off ramps for students, colleges develop and offer less than 1-year certificates that are 12 to 44 credits. These certificates have a defined labor market outcome and generally prepare students for entry-level occupations. Many of these certificates are wholly contained in a 1-year certificate or 2-year Associate of Applied Science, so stacking upon one another to create on and off ramps. Next slide, please. We have 206 total current state-approved community college certificates that are 1-year or greater certificates. The pathway to an AAS degree may also have a credential that's earned in about 1 year. As the slide shows, greater than 1-year certificates range from 45 to 108 credits and are designed to provide students with a broader set of skills as they grow into their careers and continue their education. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So like certificates of completion, Associate of Applied Science degrees vary across the state depending on local labor market needs and student demands. Individualized student transfer pathways and articulations have also been created for many CTE degrees between community colleges and their university partners to support students' next steps, education, and career goals. In the past several years, there's been significant expansion in all career areas with addition in agriculture and natural resources, such as culinary arts, horse training, precision agriculture, fisheries technology, and crop science. Arts, information, and communication programs have focused on things like information technology, cybersecurity, multimedia design, and visual communication. Business and management programs that focus on project management, accounting, business administration, and marketing. You've probably seen some of those come through. Health services are adding capacity in nursing, behavioral health, paramedicine, and surgical technology. Human resources include things like law enforcement, corrections, gerontology, early childhood education, and fire protection. Finally, industrial and engineering programs focus on manufacturing, electronics, apprenticeship trades, engineering, and renewable energy. Next slide, please. Here, you'll see ranges in the number of certificates and degrees by college. The decision to offer a certificate or degree is a local decision that is informed by employers and other community partners. The distribution seen here reflects specific circumstances in these communities and the community college service districts. Next slide, please. Now we'll take a look at trends in new programs over the past 12 years by career areas. So now we're going from total number to what we've done in the last 12 years. So next slide, please. As you can see, many programs have been added over the past 12 years, but colleges also have made decisions to end programs. So as the labor market changes, colleges have the opportunity to suspend programs for 3 years to determine if they should be deleted. During this time, current students receive support through a teach-out plan, and the college is able to evaluate the need for the program, make adjustments, or remove it completely after 3 years. Programs that have been suspended and deleted in the past 12 years have been concentrated in programs including information technology, computer support as the industry changes, transcription, medical coding, some of those things that have become more automated. So this just kind of shows just kind of that ebb and flow of additions and deletions. Next slide, please. In addition to CTE programs, in 2015, colleges were able to start offering non-credit training certificates. These short-term credentials range from 18 to 210 hours and cover topics in all 6 career areas. These credentials are offered at all but 3 colleges and cover topics such as information technology certification, real estate broker training, leadership development, project management, digital marketing, entry-level healthcare occupations, etc. The non-credit training certificates do offer flexibility to colleges and support them in being responsive and nimble to the changes in the labor market and their local partner needs. And with that, we're open to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Devlin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I very much appreciate the report. On one of the slides, I just wanted to get a clarification here. It's slide number on page 12, or it appears that in the first several years of that slide, we have a lot of suspended, or not suspended, but deleted. And then in the final 6 years, it simply goes to suspended. Are those, many of those are beyond 3 years. Has that become a more common terminology than using deleted? I know you said that they get suspend something for 3 years and then delete it if it's no longer needed.
Chair Rowe, Commissioner Devlin. So it's a little bit of both. A lot of times what will happen is a program will be suspended and undergo redesign and then be reinstated. And then also those in the last couple of years, 2022, 23, 24, those would likely still be within the 3-year window of being able to make that decision around whether or not to delete or not. And I believe that the anomaly sort of in 2019, 2020, 21 is also just a blip due to the pandemic as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Madam Chair, follow up too. I very much appreciate the report. I mean, it gives you a good idea of the number of approvals the commission has made and what type of approvals there are. I'm just hoping that we can get into probably in the next several years, evaluating some of those approvals and see if their expectations were met, particularly at the college level. University and college, well, the regional and university level, to see if they've actually have the number of students they anticipated and are graduating the number of students they anticipated. I mean, that is more of a performance-based measure than simply counting the number of bolts, basically. I'm interested more in the actual performance of these programs, whether they meet the expectations that they put forward in their applications. And I hope to see a report of that type in the next 2 to 3 years.
No, thank you for that and for that comment. That really goes in part to, I think, the motivation we had in asking for this report And this is a wonderful first step and very helpful. And I don't know, the commissioners certainly wouldn't dictate how you evaluate or even evaluate a sample. I do think our concern for new commissioners, or my interpretation of our concern, was born out of either at the university level or at the college level. Are we starting so many new programs without deleting any old ones? And to what extent are those, as the student population varies or in recent years goes down, do the universities and the colleges have the capacity to really add those, and how much is it affecting employee headcount and the ability to deliver them? So it really goes to the quality and the success for the student. And I will note that if you start in 2019, which is the pandemic year, and of course, so much has changed. So there's certainly no misunderstanding or lack of understanding that new courses are needed. But at the community college level, we're talking that we've approved almost 700 new programs in 2019, which is a huge number. And so again, the student population has gone down, and we're concerned that whether the schools have the resources to themselves stay strong as institutions if the number of courses continues to go up. So that's the source of our concern. So anything else in the future that you think would be useful on this question, we would welcome. And this is a very good report and gives us a good baseline. Thank you for that. Commissioner Sapelli?
I don't know how to ask this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. I'm just curious about the trends you predict for the future of program approvals in Oregon, mostly because I know the programs are based off of like what the local economy wants and all that fun stuff. But then at the same time, we're now emerging into this new era of like STEM, AI, GDI and all that stuff. And so I'm just curious, like, do you think increasing the number of new programs that fit the trend will also help with enrollment numbers, especially since I know the bigger universities are kind of leading that charge, but they're still struggling? And so I'm just curious.
Yeah, Chair Rowe, Commissioner, my guess is absolutely we will see the colleges being responsive to that change in the workforce and community needs as the workforce changes, just as we've seen previously when they deleted programs in, medical coding and whatnot. They do make the adjustments.
Medical coding.
And I would add, Chair Rowe and Commissioner Sapelli, what we do see at the universities and the larger ones, we anticipate we will see proposals for more graduate and research, doctoral programs that focus on the research part of the innovations that we see. These programs tend to be smaller in number, they're more expensive, but institutions will respond to the need for the research element, especially with particular areas as the state attempts to attract investments in those areas.
Right, but still there's the question of employment even with them. Okay, it's very good. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Martinez, and then we're moving along.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. I also am curious on that. I know when the consent items come through for like one-year certificates, it talks a lot about how they can stack into degrees of the. So but I haven't necessarily seen that the AASs, how they can go on from that. And so is that a part of what goes into determining whether those become a degree as well? Because I know we do need people out in the field, but what happens later when they think they need to move on in their field, is that going to help them or are they starting over?
So, Chair Rowe, Commissioner Martinez. So the answer to that is Yes, they do in specific areas. There are articulation agreements between what are known as feeder colleges to universities, and when there is an appropriate alignment to meet a workforce need, absolutely, those articulation agreements do take place. I would also add that the work that's happening with regards to the major transfer maps and common course numbering are also going to help aid in those articulations and transfer pathways for students.
Okay, and thank you both in this report and then in the next report on nursing for being so responsive to our needs to understand some of the complexities of these issues more. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Donna and Veronica. Okay, we are moving on to, we're not ahead anymore. Are you trying to signal? Oh, Vice Chair Hayman, are you okay?
Yeah, real quick. I apologize. It seems after the fact, but I'm not sure how to call attention to myself. Just from my own experience, just to my own experience, based on my own experience, it seems that a lot of my new programs were the result of restructuring of existing programs into component parts. And so you might have a one-year certificate that's a component part of a two-year program, or a less than 1 year certificate, and they're stackable. And in many cases, they didn't require the creation of all that many new courses. And I don't know, we don't know from program approvals the extent to which they require new, unique courses. But I think there was some concern about, the sort of the load associated with all these additional programs, but that may not always be the case in some of these. And so I don't know, Donna, or, if there's any thought about, is there a way of assessing the extent to which these actually result in the required teaching of new courses?
Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Hayman, I would need to consult with my colleague, Amy, from Research and Data, as well as the colleges, to find out exactly how would be the best way to capture that type of information and provide a report back.
It's a good question. Thank you for asking it, Vice Chair Hayman. Okay, now we're going to go to the delivery models for nursing education and employment demand. Again, another background responding to our request, and Sarah Foster is back with her HECC hat on.
Yeah, I'm going to put my HECC hat on for this one, but thought I would just spend a little time framing up some of the discussions that the Healthcare Industry Consortium was having before I pass it to Donna, who's doing awesome work in the community college space. So as you are aware, the Healthcare Industry Consortia is a body that the HECC convenes that includes community-based organizations, labor organizations, industry representatives, and education and training to really co-create solutions around our healthcare workforce. And since the beginning, nursing has come up over and over again as a need there's a huge shortage. The pandemic exacerbated that, but we haven't recovered from that. And so wanted to elevate that. We convened a work group and that work group is ongoing, and the consortia elevated that nursing demand planning so that not just solving for our crisis, but really thinking long-term is something that the consortium wanted to take on. So we convened a work group, and that work kicked off over the summer, and participants of that work group include the Oregon Hospital Association, Oregon Center for Nursing, SEIU, Local 503, RISE Partnership, the Health Authority, Rogue Community Colleges participating, the State Board of Nursing, and others that are, of course, integrally involved in this issue. So over the course of the year before we elevated this as something that we want to take on, really the conversation, even what I heard elevated the need for a kind of deeper dive into this issue, was that there's a there was a binary out there in terms of how are we solving this crisis? Is it a vacancy problem? So we have enough nurses graduating from our universities, but they're just not connected to the right jobs in the right places. Or is it an education and training crisis where we need to expand our education and training programs? And I think that as we came together as a group, we determined that it's a both and we really needed to come together around that both and, because folks were kind of talking about it in both places, but not coming together and articulating, because in that both and, there's short and long-term solutions. So how do we really think about this and what can we do in the short term to solve the vacancy crisis, but really set the stage for a longer-term strategy to support our nursing workforce? With this, the work group came together and just acknowledged that we needed to look at supply and demand data from multiple different angles. So when you think about demand, we need to look at it in terms of both employment demand, but also vacancy rates and employer needs, and supply, thinking about enrollment capacity, barriers to program expansion, practicum capacity, and reducing barriers to access. We also know that when you look at the nursing occupation continuum, there's a lot of diversity on the entry level jobs that don't pay as well as, say, an RN, but not the numbers for diversity in the RN field are pretty staggering. And so really supporting students along that occupation and education and training continuum. So again, we agreed that we needed to reframe this issue away from an either or to a both and with that in the short term, thinking about how we address our vacancy crisis and the maldistribution of the current workforce. So we agreed to that, which I think was a big step with all of those partners at the table. And then in the long term, really figuring out how to graduate more nurses along the entire occupation continuum. So from certified nursing assistants all the way up to RNs. And the group then acknowledged, as they get into this work, really thinking about HECC sphere of influence. So like credit for prior learning, I feel like the presentation that we just heard really set this work group up for success, but really thinking about HECC sphere of influence and what we can do, but also knowing that we're going to elevate. This is a complex, wicked problem that includes barriers in our licensure. So elevating that, but not necessarily leading that, but acknowledging that we need to do that because no one's really has a table that's thinking about this holistically. So they hope to really dive into HECC sphere of influence, but elevate other issues that are barriers to nursing program expansion and retention. So I just wanted to frame that is that we have a group that HECC is convening that's really thinking about this and hopefully can report back with the timeline is that they're going to continue to convene over the fall, but have some recommendations early next year about how the HECC can engage in that work. But thought that it would be a great opportunity for Donna to give an update about the work that they're doing.
Thank you.
Yep.
So my portion of the presentation is going to focus on community college delivery models. It's going to provide an overview of demand and of the nursing shortage, the landscape of the community college program, student performance data, including national licensing exam pass rates, and talk a little bit about what's next for the colleges who are applying to offer a Bachelor of Science nursing degree. Next slide, please. In the 2024 Oregon Talent Assessment identified labor and employment trends in nursing along with barriers within this workforce segment. Just a few things to just kind of highlight from the assessment, and Sarah talked about some of these as well. Labor shortages, gaps in pathways from the CNA to RN and the disparities in that pathway, and then also training demand and availability mismatches. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, this isn't new narrative. The nursing shortage has been documented nationally since the 1940s. The Oregon Employment Department projects more than 29,000 nursing job openings in the next 10 years. And unfortunately, Oregon is not producing enough nurses to meet that demand. We actually have a gap of about 1,600 nurses a year. Next slide, please. This information on the slide is from the 2023 Oregon Healthcare Education Shortage Study with additional details from the Oregon Center for Nursing. Also, according to a recent informal survey from CCWD staff, the acceptance rate ranges from about 8% to 67% acceptance rate. Generally, rural schools have lower application rates and higher acceptance rates than urban schools. Next slide, please. Well, it would help if my slides were in the right order for me. Sorry about that. So the Oregon Community College nursing programs, there are nursing programs at all 17 community colleges. There are certificate of practical nursing programs at 7 of the community colleges, and the newest program just was approved at Tillamook Bay Community College. And then we have a Bachelor of Science nursing. We have 7 colleges in the application process right now, and I'll provide some more information on that here in a little bit. Next slide, please. This next slide talks about the practical nursing certificate programs, and they range anywhere from 45 credits at Lane to 86 credits at Southwestern. Registered nursing AAS programs range from 90 credits at Lane and Mount Hood to 108 credits at Blue Mountain, Central Oregon PCC, and Umpqua. I will note this does not include prerequisite courses. Many of these nursing programs have significant prerequisite requirements in order to be eligible to even apply. Next slide, please. So a little bit of conversation about the Oregon Consortium for Nursing Education. It's a partnership of 9 of the community colleges and 6 campuses of the Oregon Health Science University School of Nursing. They have a shared curriculum that's taught at each of those 15 nursing programs, and the participating colleges are listed on the slide for you. Next slide, please. So I'm going to dive into some data and over the next few slides. Next slide. Of the 3,100 Associate of Applied Science degrees awarded in 2022-23, the highest number were awarded in the nursing instructional program. This slide actually shows the top 10 what are known as codes for instructional programs, or SIP codes, in those top 10 categories. This includes the number of Associate of Applied Science degrees awarded and the percent of the total for each of those SIP categories. So you'll just, this is just a little bit of data around that. So in other words, of the 3,100 Associate of Applied Science degrees awarded, the SIP that had the highest number and percentages of degrees awarded is listed at the top in descending order. Okay, next slide, please. The number of Associate Applied Science degrees awarded in nursing peaked in 2016-17, and since then has actually declined nearly 14%. That decreases from calculating the percent change at the peak number awarded in 2016 to the number awarded in 2022-23. This slide shows the raw numbers, so not a percentage. It's actually the numbers for the last 10 years.
Does that track enrollment trends?
Yeah, it does.
Thank
you. While the total number, oh, sorry, next slide, please, Guthrie. Thank you. While the total number of associate applied science degrees awarded in nursing has not declined as drastically as the number of associate applied science degree awarded, there were 4% fewer associate of applied science degrees awarded in 2022 than in 2013-14. As I've mentioned, there is a bit of a correlation. Next slide, please. While the total number of associate applied science awarded in nursing is typically highest at the community colleges located in the Willamette Valley, this heat map shows the raw numbers of associate of applied science degrees awarded by the community colleges in the last 10 years. The darker the color or the more saturated is the higher the number of associate of applied science degrees awarded. And not surprisingly, you'll see the higher numbers at the larger institutions. Next slide, please. Their percentage of all associate of applied science degrees is typically higher at the regional community colleges. In other words, for this one, the darker color or more saturated shows the higher the percentage of associate of applied science in nursing degrees awarded. I do want to note what we think is likely a data anomaly for Clatsop Community College. We're looking into that. You'll see that they're reporting 0 for the last 3 years. We think that is likely a data anomaly, and we're looking into that. So in full transparency. Next slide, please. For the last 5 years, most students at Oregon Coast Community Colleges have earned their associates applied science in nursing, ranging from 68 to 94 of the total associate of applied science degrees awarded. Just a little note of that. Next slide, please. Students who self-identify as women have consistently earned a majority of the associate of applied science degrees awarded in nursing. That was not surprising, but it's always nice to throw in some data that shows the continued gender gap in this particular education area. Next slide, please. Also, while the number of students of color earning associate of applied science degrees in nursing has increased since 2012-13, there was a 20% decrease in 2023 from the previous year. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about after graduation. So after a student graduates, they need to take a licensure exam. Among the community college RN test takers between 2019 to 23, we had an average of 546 exam takers with an average score of 91% annually. That's pretty good outcomes, I would say. Next slide, please. This is a 1-year snapshot of the pass rates for 2023. 16 of the community college data are showed here. Tillamook Bay is not available because it's a new program. Next slide. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Middleton.
Just a quick question on these, Madam Chair. Thank you. If they don't pass the exam, what happens? Do they get to take it again? Do they get charged money for that? Do you know?
I would need to follow up. My gut is that yes, they could sit for it again after a specific waiting period, but they'd have to pay again to take the license or take the exam. But I'd want to follow up and confirm that just to be sure. Okay. This slide here shows the pass rates, includes the percentage of test takers that pass the number and the number of people taking the test. So this gives you the actual numbers to go along with the percentages. Next slide, please. And then the number of test takers for practical nursing is considerably smaller given the limited number of programs, but pass rates are very high among those programs as well, with nearly all programs at 100% at any given year. Next slide, please. So what's next for the community colleges? Senate Bill 523 passed in 2023 amended the statute to allow community colleges to offer Bachelor of Science and nursing degree. The requirements are that it's post-RN licensure. We admit students that have already earned an associate's degree. It has to be 180 total credits, 60 of which must be upper division. Some colleges are incorporating prerequisites and credit for prior learning. CCWD staff are currently reviewing phase 2 applications from the consortium of community colleges, which are listed there on the slide. And CCWD staff are expecting those to go before the commission in November. It will just be an informational item for you at that point. There'll be no action needed for that next phase. And Lane, we are still anticipating the submission for their phase 2 piece. Next slide, please. So in case you have questions about the consortium approach, it's a statewide Bachelors of Science Nursing Consortium agreement. There's 6 colleges. They're looking to share curriculum, share faculty. They're looking to limit local variability to support student transfer. So if you start at one of the 6 colleges and you move to one of the participating 6 colleges, you'll hopefully not miss a beat. Local faculty advising, commitment to minimize education costs. There is a network of employer partners that are participating in a program advisory committee and looking to support nurses to stay in their communities so they can train in their communities and stay there. Next slide. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
What point, Donna, do you think it will come back to us for action from the consortium? Because I know there's.
I'm guessing right after the first part of the year. If I had to anticipate. So they'll enter into phase 2 and then they can quickly submit their paperwork for consideration for phase 3. So depending on how quickly they get through, any of those additional tidying up of requirements for submission for phase 3, they could come as early as December or January, but I would anticipate after the first of the year, to be honest.
And my memory from the legislative testimony that you gave is that it would still be 27 or quite a few years from now, even if that is approved, before students could be graduated from it or could even enroll in it, right? Would you share with the commission the anticipated timeline, even if that is approved?
Yeah, so the Chair Rowe and members of the commission, so we're just part of the first part of this process. After the commission approves these programs, they'll need to go to Northwest Commission for approval. And then there is also the federal financial aid approval process. So there could be anywhere from 6 to 18 months before the programs are actually ready to hit the ground for student enrollment, because they want, obviously we want to be able to have students access financial aid.
And is there anything else than all of the work of the group or in your expertise and background? Is there anything else that can help in the shorter term to address any of the need? Or are we just stuck until all of that can happen?
So I think that it's just the education and training system takes the time it takes. But I think that's where the group got into the vacancy challenge. We know when you look at the data that there are nurses that are not practicing. And we also know that nurses are leaving. the field. So when you, I mean, I don't think that's a surprise to anyone here. And so when you look at even Donna's data, people are getting trained appropriately. They're passing the test. It's just when they reach employment, whether it's culture, they're not supported by a manager in a way that's conducive to retention, then folks are leaving. So I think that there's a lot to do. And I'll just share that as part of the consortia's process, we contracted with a consultant to do employer focus groups to start to elevate some interim recommendations around how we might support retention across the healthcare workforce. So not just nursing, and supporting managers was a theme that continues to come up in both behavioral health and in the nursing space, and retaining good managers to support incoming nurses. And so that's just one of several strategies that I'm hopeful, I'm not in this role anymore, but I'm hopeful that the work group can unpack. And I know the Oregon Center for Nursing has done a ton of work around the vacancy challenge. And so I think that in the short term is where we can focus our attention while supporting these longer term solutions, because you also need to expand your education and training programs to look ahead. We also know through that exercise that it's tricky because employers don't do long-term demand planning. And so I think it puts the education and training system in a bind isn't the right word, but of like, how much do we produce, and knowing that we're not going to launch these programs for 4 years. And I think that's something the consortium, I know there's two consortium and that's confusing. The healthcare industry consortium can really, that has a lot of employers at the table, is starting to think about how do we better ourselves articulate our longer term needs, knowing that the education and training system can only scale so much. And without that number, I think in nursing we know enough, but in some of the other occupations, it can be tricky.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Heyman, and Commissioners. It is so good to be here with you. I am Abby Lee, and I am the new Executive Director of the Oregon Community College Association. I am so proud to represent this organization. I have an incredible love for community colleges. I started on July 1st. So while I'm new to OCCA, I am not new to community colleges. I worked at Treasure Valley Community College. I was always interested in those the data points that were just shown recently, for 25 years. And so I worked on a number of programs, oversaw a number of programs. Most recently, left as I was the Vice President of College Relations. And so at a rural community college, you get a good sense of a lot of areas. So those of you who may know what the organization is, this might be a little bit of a review, but as you get to know me, you'll find that I love to share our mission statement every time I talk about the Oregon Community College Association. And so with that, OCCA mission statement is leading with racial equity. We advocate, communicate, and collaborate to strengthen community colleges for the benefit of Oregonians, particularly those historically underserved or systemically marginalized in higher education. And so when I think about our mission statement and what HECC is doing, I think that we have a lot of alignment in that, and we can be really proud of that work. And it's really just quickly in that framework that I wanted to provide an introduction of myself, as well as a reflection of some of the work that OCCA is doing with HECC as our partners. I was really struck by the conversation about math and developmental education, and I appreciated your statement of sobering. It is